Imagine for a second, you get home after a tough day. The weight of the world is on your shoulders. Your head is full of questions no one seems to answer. You drop the keys on the console by the door, and before you even realize it, your dog is already there, looking into your eyes, deep, silent, as if all the love in the world lived in that look and something more. Now, pause for a second and try to feel it. That instant when all the noise outside disappears. Time stands still. It's not just an exchange of affection, not just companionship. It's so comforting, almost supernatural, the feeling that the soul in front of you sees you, as if it recognizes something you don't even fully understand yourself. Maybe you felt this with your cat, with a bird that repeatedly visited you at the window, or even with a horse in a distant childhood. It doesn't seem rational, but deep down, a doubt settles in. Could there be something beyond chance in these connections? Before we dive into this mystery, I want to invite you to reflect. How many times in your life have you felt that an animal understands you deeply more than many people do? Comment down below which animal has touched your soul in a special way. And if you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon, leave a like, because today, together, we're going to cross the veil of the everyday and see the invisible. Ready to open your mind and heart? What if I told you that maybe this feeling, this inexplicable connection, isn't pure imagination? What if, for a moment, you dared to believe that this is actually one of the biggest clues that your soul and that soul, yes, of that specific animal, have a story bigger than this life can show? Just imagine, the universe, so vast and mysterious, isn't limited to encounters between human beings. The stage of existence is so much broader. Is it possible that the connections between humans and animals are actually reunions of old souls? Bonds that transcend time, space, the very concept of species. Feel the strangeness of that thought, an almost childlike call to fantasy, but at the same time, as addictive as watching the sunset and feeling there's something to be understood, a truth whispering between the margins of reality. Think with me, why do some people swear they recognize a look? Why do young children sometimes connect immediately with certain animals, as if they've met old friends again? Why do so many feel a devastating grief when they lose an animal, as if they buried a part of themselves? These are questions that defy cold logic. But maybe, just maybe, they open a window to something grand and scary. Maybe our souls walk on crossed journeys, learning and teaching each other through different forms in countless lives. That's today's invitation. What if the universe is infinitely more mysterious than we were taught? What if your dog's soul was, in a distant life, a person you loved? Or who knows, in another existence, you were the faithful friend of a lost being, giving love back on four legs? A paradigm shift? Absolutely. But open your mind and feel the thrill of daring to imagine. Let's expand on this thought. You know that strange feeling when you find an animal on the street and you feel it's not a stranger but an old companion who was just waiting to meet you again? Or maybe that immediate affinity that arises from a look, a shy pat, a wagging tail, or a soft meow signs that could be just animal communication. But what if they are longings overflowing from past lives? Imagine an elderly woman who, after the sudden death of her husband, finds emotional shelter in a bird that appears at her window every day. She swears it's him saying, "I'm here." Or the boy who survives a tragedy and in the orphanage finds solace in an abandoned dog with whom he shares such a strong bond that the caregivers wonder, where does this come from? Now challenge your own memory. Maybe the homeless person on the corner with a sweet gaze and a fragile smile was, in another life, your faithful horse, that silent friend who crossed storms by your side. And why not? The nurse who held your hand in the hospital might carry, deeply dormant, the memory of having been a therapy cat, the one who, with small gestures, saved your nights from despair. These examples seem unlikely, almost absurd. But there are countless reports of people who swear, "My animal was someone important in my story. I know, I feel it." This transcends common sense, defies conventions, and at the same time connects all of us because we have all felt that inexplicable spark, that unexpected warmth coming from a being who supposedly doesn't speak our language. And what if, deep inside every game, every hug, every sigh at night, there are distant echoes of a shared past? memories buried by the wheel of rebirth, just waiting for a look to awaken them? Maybe that's why reunions bring tears of joy, of relief, of something that escapes reason, but pulses strongly in the chest. Humanity has never been satisfied with accepting mystery as simple chance. Since the beginning, we have sought answers. And, in the midst of this search, some figures have stood up bridges between the palpable and the invisible, tireless questioners of what is beyond the veil. One of them was Edgar Cayce, a name little known outside of mystical circles, but decisive for those seeking to understand the hidden flow of life. Cayce, called the Sleeping Prophet, dedicated his entire existence to exploring the enigmas of the soul, performing thousands of spiritual readings in a trance state for over 40 years. He never explored only the human. Cayce dared to ask about everything that the science of the time still refused to examine: reincarnation, past lives, the purpose of existence, and yes, the connection between human and animal souls. According to Cayce, every being, whether a person or an animal, is an individual spark of the Creator, living unique experiences to expand the consciousness of the whole. In his accounts, he was certain the soul is free to experience many bodies, roles, species. Learning is not limited to the borders of a human body. Many souls, according to Cayce, meet many times in different forms so that they can learn together what they could not alone. If in one life they were owners and animals, in another they can be siblings, parents, and children, or even switch roles according to what each journey asks for that evolution. In one of his most emblematic readings, Cayce said, "The bond you feel is not an illusion, it is a memory of journeys shared through the centuries." This concept is so revolutionary that it still provokes heated debates among scientists, religious people, and the curious. But think, how many times have you looked into an animal's eyes and had the strange feeling that it knew what you feel, even without words? How many times has it been your silent support, your mute confidant, your emotional mirror? Cayce suggested that when we feel this, we are touching eternity. We are recognizing a known soul, reuniting with an old friend who accepted to return in a different form just to be with us again, now that the scenery of life has changed. And maybe that explains why some goodbyes hurt so much. According to Cayce, the grief for the loss of an animal is an ancestral longing, an extension of the pain of the primordial exile of souls who seek each other, and periodically meet again to learn, love, and grow together. It's not just philosophy, it's the essence of spirituality translated into daily encounters. For now, breathe. Think of all the bonds you have formed with humans or animals. Wouldn't it be wonderful to see each reunion as a piece of eternity revealing itself to you? Have you already left your comment telling me which animal marked you? Do it now, because in the next few minutes we will dive even deeper, and you won't want to miss what's coming. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share this video, because this knowledge changes the lives of those who seek meaning. Imagine this. You are sitting on the porch, the day is starting to get dark, and the afternoon silence reveals sounds that were previously unnoticed. An insect beating its wings, the rustling of leaves in the wind, small noises that make up the symphony of existence. And suddenly, a butterfly lands on your shoulder. It stays there for long seconds, as if it were waiting for something. You wonder, almost like a whisper from within, why does this feel more like an encounter than a coincidence? Now hold that thought. What if this butterfly is an old soul, a particle of what you were or of what you loved, coming back just for a moment to remind you that there is still a connection, that there is no definitive separation, but rather pauses in an infinite conversation between souls? Stories like this accumulate in the accounts of those who are attentive to subtleties. A woman spends years trying to overcome the loss of her father, when one day an abandoned cat appears at her door. It does nothing. It just watches her. But its eyes have exactly the same mottled pattern, the same eyes she saw in old family photos, the eyes of the man she lost. It could be a coincidence, of course, but she swears that in moments of sadness, the cat sits next to her exactly like her father did, in the same posture, as if it knew, as if it were saying, "I'm still here." In another city, there is the case of the autistic boy who had never spoken to anyone, until he adopted a Labrador, already old, rescued from the streets. In less than 2 months, this boy started to pronounce words to the dog. He said the name Luis, almost always with tears in his eyes. The doctors attributed this to therapy, but the mother, suppressing her despair, knew that Luis was the name of the child's grandfather, a man who died even before the boy was born, and who had been buried with a portrait of a Labrador tied to his chest. Coincidence or echo of the soul? The revelations come in layers, and with each new layer, a chill runs through us like an eternal whisper. There is more in this world than we can see, more than we can touch, and the more we open ourselves to these experiences, the more they happen. Because perhaps the language of the soul only reveals itself when we silence the mind and allow ourselves to feel. Some animals don't come into our lives, they simply return. They place themselves in front of us, they find us, because their mission never ended, because their longing also speaks. Who said only humans remember? Now, take a deep breath. Let's completely invert the way you see life. Since we were little, we are taught that the human being is at the top of the scale. Rationality, intelligence, progress, civilization. But what if it's the opposite? What if animals are the true masters? Not in the academic sense, but spiritual. What if the dog that looks at you with infinite loyalty every day, even when you're in a bad mood, even when you make mistakes, is a more awakened consciousness than yours? Think with me. We hide feelings, we manipulate, we judge, we compete. We create wars with ideologies. We kill for invisible borders. Animals just live. They live what they feel. They love without demanding. They forgive immediately. They feel with their whole body. They die with dignity. They suffer in silence. And above all, they teach by example, not with words. Since ancient times, great masters of spirituality already pointed to animals as pure beings connected to the invisible realms. In indigenous tradition, each animal carries a totem spirit. In Egyptian culture, cats were spiritual guardians. In shamanism, they talk about spirit guides in animal form. And then, what did we do? We turned this into legend, folklore, forgetting that the sacred rarely imposes itself, it hides in simplicity. And what if the great mistake is not treating them as less, but as things? Edgar Cayce said, "The true test of an incarnated soul is not how much it progresses technologically, but how much it is capable of loving without ego." And in this silent test, animals are ahead of us, because they don't love with conditions. They don't love expecting more from us than just presence. Maybe that's why so many people cry more over the death of a dog than a relative they fought with their whole life. It's uncomfortable to admit, but yes, maybe animals are more spiritually advanced than we are, and are right now incarnating among us to teach us some kind of love we have forgotten or that we never knew how to practice. And if all this is true, what changes in the way we treat the beings around us? And what if every hummingbird, every elephant, every cat curled up on your lap is a consciousness on a mission, a soul in silent service? The answer might hurt or free you. Now answer me sincerely, and if you want, write in the comments right now. Have you ever had the feeling that an animal appeared in your life at the exact right moment, as if it had been waiting all along just for you? It seems like magic, a coincidence, but it's something almost everyone has felt. That cat that appeared at your door the day after your grandmother's funeral. That dog that followed you for 4 blocks and only stopped when you looked at it and cried. That little bird that always came to your window, even among so many neighbors. Why? Maybe it's because they knew. Because they were already with you even before you remembered. Even before this life. Maybe your grandmother's soul, knowing your pain, took on the universe's call for you and came back as that cat. Or maybe that bird was a childhood friend from another existence, trying to say, "I'm here, you are never alone." You know that child who talks to the cat as if it were an adult and seems to hear advice even without words? Maybe they are accessing something we forgot when we grew up. Maybe they remember. And you? What do you feel when you look at your animal? Have you ever noticed when they stare at you in silence? It seems like they see inside you, right? That they know, even without you telling them, that day was hard, that loss hurt, that longing screams, and then they lie down next to you. They don't ask for explanations. They don't try to fix anything. They just stay. And in that silence, something is healed. Because when the soul is tired, the presence of someone who loves you without words is like coming home. Maybe your dog was an old friend in a human costume in a previous life. Or maybe your love for horses is a distant memory from when you rode in the desert of old Asia in forgotten times. We feel longings we cannot name, but they pulse when we find that right animal at the right moment. And the truth is simple and devastating. There is no chance when the soul is ready. Reunions happen in ways no human script could predict. Nothing screams eternity louder than a silent presence that arrives and transforms everything. Now close your eyes, take a deep breath. Remember some animal that deeply marked your life, that changed you, that taught you something, even if it barely lived. That name, that image are not lost. They are alive in you. Because maybe they are waiting for you in the time where everything comes back together again, where nothing is lost, where all bonds cross paths again with new forms but the same souls. Now, take a deep breath with me. Close your eyes for a brief moment and imagine that the universe is a great cosmic school, a place where everything that exists is here to learn one thing, to love. But not the love we see in soap operas. Not that love distorted by possession, fear, or need. We are talking about essential love, the force that makes stars be born, that moves galaxies, that sustains the pulse of life in every corner of time. Now imagine that this divine force, this creative love, chose to experience itself in countless forms, like rivers, like stones, like trees, like you, like your cat, like your dog. What if the great purpose of existence was exactly this, each soul living a new form, a new story, just to understand love from different perspectives? Reflect deeply on this. What is more valuable, loving while being fragile, loving while being different, loving without knowing how to speak, loving even when rejected? Maybe the soul, in its silent wisdom, knows that there are lessons that can only happen when we live in other skins, and yes, maybe even in other species. If you came to Earth as a human in this life, maybe in another you came as an animal. Maybe you needed to learn to trust without guarantees, to give without words, to obey without pride, to serve without expecting anything in return. And on the other hand, maybe that dog you adore is not just a dog, but a soul as ancient as yours, that one day chose to experience life as a human and now returns to you, offering redemption, reconnection, rescue. It's hard to accept this, isn't it? But think about it. Why does your heart race when you see a horse galloping in the field? Why do you cry when you see animal rescues? Why does the smell of wet fur remind you of a childhood hug, which you don't even know if you lived? Because something inside the soul recognizes what the mind still cannot explain. Maybe, just maybe, we are not human beings with spiritual experiences, but rather eternal souls, having different forms of existence, human, animal, even energetic, in search of the same horizon, to evolve in the art of love. And in the universal dance of incarnations, is it possible that our paths do not cross again and again until we stop separating me and you, until we see in every look, human or animal, an image of the divine? This perspective changes everything. It transforms who you think you are, and it invites you to see the world with the eyes of the soul. If all these possibilities are true, what are you doing with this knowledge now? If every being that crosses your path is a soul in the process of awakening just like you, then the responsibility is immense and inevitable, because you can no longer treat animals as things, as instruments, as objects of possession. You can no longer turn your face away from animal suffering, because it is not just physical pain, it's soul pain. Maybe that ox that is being dragged on the truck cries out of fear, yes, but maybe it also cries because it remembers something. Someone. The look of a boy who fed it in another incarnation. Someone who now, on the other side of the fence, ignores it in the name of some tradition. This is where the most difficult question of this journey comes in. How do you treat the souls that are under your responsibility? The ones you call my pets. The ones who are there daily, giving love, asking for so little. Have you ever wondered who is really taking care of whom? Because maybe your dog is taking care of you. Healing anxieties that even your therapist doesn't understand. Maybe that pigeon you scared off the sidewalk today was, in a past life, an old travel partner, or that street cat you avoid looking at. It might be on a mission, testing your most basic compassion. And no, it's not about romanticizing animal suffering. It's about recognizing the great spiritual tragedy we live in. We forgot that we are surrounded by consciousnesses, by souls. And when we forget, we abuse, we hurt, we kill. But now you know, and when the soul knows, it can no longer pretend ignorance. It can only choose. Choose to look differently, act differently, protect what was once invisible. Taking care of animals is not a moral obligation. It's an evolutionary step. It's the evolution of the soul. Edgar Cayce said that being born in human form was a great honor, but also a test, and that the deepest test was simple. Are you able to recognize the divine, not only in temples, but also in the eyes of a dog? And then I return the question to you. How have you been treating the sacred when it comes to you, on four paws, with eyes full of love and silence? Now let me tell you one last story. They say that once, in a small village in the interior of India, an old spiritual master before dying said to his disciples, "When I am gone, wait for me. I will return, maybe as a little bird, maybe as a dog that will cross your paths without warning. But when you look into my eyes, you will know." And the years passed. He died and was never seen again by most. But one of his disciples, already old, swore that one day on a walk in the field, a small dog followed him to his front door. It stopped in front of him, looked into his eyes, and he cried. He knew deep in his soul who was there. Those eyes were not new. They were ancestral. They were from eternity. Maybe one day it will happen to you. Maybe in the middle of the chaos of modern life, you will find that look again, that being who loved you so deeply 2, 3, 10 lives ago, and it comes back, and you recognize it, and everything makes sense. Death is not the end. It's just an interval between breaths, between reunions. The soul finds ways. The energy of love does not dissolve, and maybe one day you will come back too. Maybe as the dog of someone who is now suffering the same thing you suffered. Maybe as the horse of a child who needs to escape a world that rejects her. Maybe as the bird that brings comfort on dark days. Because in the end, everything is love. Everything is a lesson. Everything is a reunion. If this video touched your heart, leave your comment here. Tell us if an animal has crossed your path in an inexplicable way. Share your story, your memory. And if you want more content that speaks to your soul, to your instinct, to that part of you that knows there is something bigger, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and share this video with someone you believe needs to hear this. Together, we can change the world. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to get access to more stories like this. Starting with our eyes, then with our heart. Love remembers, even when we forget. And it comes back. It always comes back.